Hi, and welcome to the Skincarma Pod. I'm Carmine, the creator and voice of the Skincarma blog. With more than 25 years in beauty as a brand builder, copywriter, and skincare junkie, I'm putting my product wisdom and expertise to work demystifying skincare. Today's conversation is one I've been wanting to have for a long time because it challenges one of the biggest assumptions we make about acne, that the best way to treat it is head on, topically. My guest is returning to the podcast, Dr. Katie Varman. In fact, Dr. Varman was one of my first guests ever, and I'm so honored she's agreed to join me again. Dr. Varman is a board certified dermatologist who combines conventional dermatology with functional medicine. And this time, we're taking a deeper look at acne through a very different lens. You may have heard or read about the gut skin connection, or how diet and the microbiome influence inflammation and hormone balance, and even why so many people find themselves stuck in an acne cycle of trying product after product without seeing any lasting change or real results. Dr. Varman has been developing a comprehensive 3-month program focused on healing acne from the inside out. It's built around elimination, reintroduction, and optimization. What I appreciate most is that this isn't about restriction for the sake of it. It's about understanding why your skin is responding the way it is. I think this is a really important conversation for estheticians and other skincare professionals because it opens up a broader way of thinking about how you may support clients beyond what can be applied topically. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right with your skincare but still not seeing results, this episode will give you a completely new framework for thinking about acne and skin health in general. So let's do it. Let's welcome Dr. Varman to the pod. Hello, Katie. Welcome back to the Skincarma pod.
Hi, Carmine. It's so great to see you again.
Same. I'm so honored to have you back and to talk about something super innovative. Like, I think it's going to revolutionize acne care. But before we get into the course and the whole idea of the gut skin connection and all of that, I'd love for you to maybe reintroduce yourself to listeners who maybe didn't hear our original episode from about a year ago.
Yeah, perfect. So I am a traditionally trained board dermatologist, and I have a small private practice in Northern California. I worked in the system for like 5+ years and decided that I wanted to practice a little bit differently. And so that's why I opened up my clinic. And I really focus much more on a holistic approach to skincare, and all of our latest, information and research and everything is guiding us toward this idea of, gut health being really important, and diet and nutrition, and so many things that aren't being talked about in dermatology clinics. And so that's really where my passion lies. And that's why we developed this acne course.
Yeah. And what's the name of the course?
So it's called Clear Skin from Within, and I
Mm-hmm.
developed it with a chef. Her name is Chef Kimber Dean. She's been using food as medicine for over 20 years, and she's a certified yoga instructor, and all sorts of different, mindfulness practices. And so we teamed up to develop this 90-day acne course where we're really trying to provide all of the education and all the tools so that people can heal their skin from the inside and, really clear their skin sustainably.
Yeah. And I think, most people think about treating acne, and certainly as a dermatologist, you treat acne kind of like maybe use a somewhat of a holistic approach. There's obviously medications you can take, but most people think about treating acne topically. And I just wonder, like, when over the course of your practice and your long career and your education, when did it become clear to you that acne is really systemic rather than just like a surface issue?
Right. It definitely was not something that I learned in training. And I think a lot of people recognize that now. In traditional medical training, it's all about making a diagnosis and then what tools do you have available to help fix that based off of our understanding. And so when I left kind of big medicine and started my own practice, I started having a lot more time with people. And funny, like you could start listening to people better, right, when you have more time. And so people would
Mm.
tell me that this would get better, and they'd ask questions that I didn't have the answers to. And when you can take the time to, one, listen to your patients, and then two, do the research and start just scouring the literature, it turned out that there was a lot of research that supported what people were telling me. And so I just had the time, I guess, is the short answer, to really pursue those. And then I started working with more and more people, and it all kind of fell together. What was difficult is just having the time to do all the
Yeah.
education. And I think that really became clear that that was the missing link, because there's always going to be a role for dermatologists. Dermatologists are well trained to make a diagnosis, and we have all these great tools to treat acne from the outside and from the inside, as far as like medications and pharmaceuticals. And we have estheticians and people who can do great work to kind of help calm the skin and soothe the skin. But the big piece that's missing is the education. And so the goal of the course is to really just, provide that foundation and all the education that you just don't have enough time in the clinic to provide.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you said about, listening to your patients and then going that extra step to think beyond just the person in front of you.
Yeah.
And I remember back to my, that I am a migraineur, and I remember the first time I went to a neurologist, she wasn't a very good neurologist. She wasn't listening and really responding to what I was saying to her about my own personal experience. And
Yeah.
she ended up mistreating me. And it caused, profound issues for me in the beginning, because I was presenting with, migraines every day.
Wow.
And it was only when I realized that I'd never been to a neurologist before, but I got to the point where I realized that she actually wasn't doing me any good. And I changed to another neurologist who did actually listen to me. Like,
Yeah.
she never dismissed a word I said. Everything I said, no matter how idiosyncratic it was, mattered to her. And she always responded to that. And she's been my neurologist now for 6 years. And I actually reached out to her a couple weeks ago over DMs, and I just wanted to express that impression that
Yeah.
I'd had of her of all this time. So I really appreciate that. And look where it's taken you. Like, this is
Well,
how innovation happens.
yeah, and it's tough though, because most people get into medicine with that level of curiosity, but the system really doesn't support it. And so
Yeah.
when you're in a system where there's certain expectations for how many people you need to see an hour, and it moves so fast, it really does a good job to like just squander. You just don't have the time to pursue
Yeah.
the curiosity anymore, and to try things with people and learn from people and get that kind of feedback. And so fortunately, as a dermatologist, I can exist outside of the system, right? But there's a lot of
Mm.
people, gastroenterologists, and who are, they need OR rooms, and they need the whole system to be able to practice. And so I think it's a bigger problem. But me being fortunate that I could go off on my own as a dermatologist, because I can operate in a small clinic, really is what enabled me to be able to offer the kind of care that I wanted to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's shift to the Shine Skin Academy. That
Yeah.
sounds like Starfleet Academy out of Star Trek. That's why I
Yeah.
love I love saying it.
So our
Um,
our clinic is Shine Functional
yeah.
Dermatology, and so the Skin Academy is like the broader academy, and then Clear Skin
Mhm.
Within from Within is the course that Chef Kimber and I created specifically for acne as our first course. But there will be more,
Got it. There'll be more to come
more to
for
come.
those of us
Yes.
who aren't struggling with acne, maybe
Yep.
struggling with other things. Yeah. Okay. That's
Eczema is
great.
probably next on the list, but eczema is a tough one too. So, and that's what
Yeah.
people don't really realize is acne is so much more complicated than people get it credit for, because everyone just thinks about what's going on the skin. There's oil production and there's hyperkeratosis, right? Like the excess skin kind of plugging the pores, and there's
Mm.
bacteria and there's some inflammation. But what people aren't seeing is that there's all these underlying drivers that are causing the oil glands to make more oil, and it's causing the skin to create more skin and plug the pores. And so as common as acne is, it's actually very complex, just like eczema.
Isn't that wild for you
Yeah.
to say that?
Yeah. Yeah. This course is 6 hours, like plus of lessons. So it is
Right.
not like superficial, high level. Like it is in the weeds with hormones and gut health and environmental chemicals and stress and like mindfulness. And it's because all of these things come together and create acne from the inside. And everyone kind of comes from different places, but there's key
Right.
triggers, key pathways that everybody, has some shared ground too.
All right, so let's just, get into the course.
Yeah.
Um introduce the course, how the course works, how
Hmm.
someone would approach it, how they would enroll in it, and what it looks like over the course of that 6 weeks.
Yeah. So right now we really just launched it. So we're kind of in like a beta mode right now where we're really trying to encourage people to come in and give us feedback and work through the course with us. Because it's set up in modules. So it's a 3 month course.
Mhm.
And each month has kind of a different goal so that it's not overwhelming and so that it's follows kind of that healing process. So the first month is what we call the elimination month. So clear stands for cleanse, learn, eat, activate, and restore. So the cleanse and learn is the first module. And so that's when we're really pulling out triggers, both in the environment and in the diet, that we know can really aggravate acne. And then once you're used to eating that way and you're kind of working through pulling out, key offensive stuff in the environment, then the next module, we're rolling into the eat and activate, where we're really trying to introduce dietary components that will support the health of a good, healthy gut microbiome. So the spices, the herbs, the polyphenols, all the things that can help heal. And then into the last module, the restore module, is when we're really teaching how to maintain those changes. Because this isn't like a quick fix, like take this supplement or like just remove dairy and your skin is going to be clear forever. This is a whole lifestyle change. And so the goal is, how do we now bring in the fibers and the fermented foods and maintain the benefits for lifelong healing? Because it's not just helpful for your skin, right? Your skin is just a reflection of the internal imbalances, but
Mm.
later what that might look like, it might look like PCOS, and it might look like anxiety or depression or IBS symptoms, or ultimately autoimmunity. So the idea is that the skin is acne can be a red flag for internal imbalances that ultimately can have other downstream effects. So we use acne as kind of like a as a way to understand what our body is trying to tell us.
Okay, so the first month is the elimination phase, the cleanse and learn. And
Right.
what is that? What are we actually eliminating, and how are we identifying what we're eliminating? Or is everybody eliminating the same things?
So everybody eliminates the same things. And of
Hmm.
course, for one person, dairy might be a huge trigger, and for another person, it might not make a big difference. But the
Mm.
goal is to be able to capture, everybody with this course. And so we're doing eliminations, both diet and environment. So in the diet, really the number one thing is processed foods in general, to generalize. But dairy is a huge trigger for a lot of people because, sorry, my light's going to pop off. Thank you, California. I'm not moving enough. So, so dairy is a big trigger for a lot of people with acne because it specifically activates growth factor pathways that are designed to make baby animals grow. And so
Mm.
and so it's not inherently bad for you or anything like that, but those pathways, when we overactivate them, are big triggers for acne. And so that's the saturated fats, the amino acids, and then specific growth factors that are in there to make animals grow. So dairy is something that we pull out in the beginning. Sugar is a huge problem because it also activates through something called the insulin-like growth factor pathway. It also specifically activates acne. And so anything that raises your blood sugar, so high glycemic foods, are also going to be off the table. And then for some people, I call it a metabolic acne. that's that PCOS picture for women. Some people high fasting insulin and all the downstream effects, that is their primary driver. And so we might need to be even more aggressive with blood sugar control for a subset of people. But acne is always inflammatory. Sorry, sugar is always inflammatory.
Got
So,
it. Yeah.
so the dairy, the sugar, the processed foods, which we can talk more about, and then we also eliminate gluten not because we have literature saying that there's a clear link between acne and gluten. That is one where we don't have really clear medical literature. But anecdotally, I've seen almost every skin condition get better for some people with the elimination of gluten. And so it is so highly inflammatory for such a large number of people for
Mm.
several different reasons. And so that is something that we pull off, at least in the elimination phase as well.
So you've mentioned inflammation and inflammatory quite a bit.
Yes.
What is that link about?
Yeah.
And like we've talked about this, like I don't even know when I'm inflamed, except maybe if I have, phlegm as a reaction to something I've eaten, like strawberries often. And, we've talked about the reason for that.
Mhm.
Or dinner the other night, like all of a sudden I realized that I was getting like all of this whatever response. And I ended up getting a migraine at 1 in the morning. And it was
Mhm.
directly linked to what I had eaten. So, what is the deal with inflammation?
And inflammation is a very broad term, but
Mm,
and it's just like stress, right? Where there's you want inflammation in certain situations. If you have an infection, if you have an injury, inflammation means that you have a collection of different cells that are responding to a trigger. And so, if you
mm.
cut yourself, you want it to be inflamed because you want the body to come in and heal. And if you know, excuse me, I'm gonna cough. Sorry, I'm almost totally better, and hopefully you can edit this.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I was like, I hope I can get through the whole thing, but I might need a cough drop at one point. I'll try. Sorry.
No problem.
I was saying, okay, so if you cut yourself, okay, and right, and of course, if you have a cold or something like that, you want the inflammation in order to help heal. But there's also levels, what we call chronic low grade inflammation, where your body never quite gets back down to baseline, and your immune system is always a little bit active. And one reason for that is from inflammation from the gut. We call it chronic endotoxemia, but essentially there's bacteria in the gut that are not necessarily dangerous, but maybe suboptimal. And they create toxins that, if you have a leaky gut, can kind of smolder right through your gut and create this low level of inflammation. And then other things can also drive chronic inflammation. So inflammation in itself is not a bad thing, but when it's this kind of chronic low
Mm,
grade inflammation, it can cause joint aches and pains. We know that inflammation is associated with mood changes. So, certain types of inflammation, especially the type of inflammation that you get from the gut, can cause depression, or as I should say, is associated with depression. And so, um, it can look like a lot of different things for different people. From a skin perspective, you can visibly
yeah.
see inflammation. It's red, it's inflamed, it's tender, and it's at the root of acne.
Fascinating. Oh my God, this is so fascinating. And so, through that elimination phase, that first month, are you seeing at the end of the month, presumably, a reduction in inflammation? Is that really what's happening?
Yes, yes. We're trying to eliminate all of the things that are putting pressure on the system, and activating those pathways that we're really trying to just cool everything down.
Mm,
And then into the next module is when we're really introducing like the healing agents. So like I was saying, the spices and the herbs and the things that will really help heal the gut once we've pulled off the triggers.
and what are examples of those spices and herbs? And this is where your chef partner
Yes.
comes into play, right? This is her role.
This is her role. This is where she really
Yeah,
brings all the food to life, because it's easy for me to be like, "Hey, stop eating processed foods
right.
and cut these things out and and be less stressed." All right, see you later.
Mm,
And people are like, "What do I do with this?" And
right.
it is a big change, to go from, a lot of people eat multiple meals out even in one day, and it's intimidating to go from that to like going to the grocery store and like going down the fresh whole food aisles and being like, what do I eat? And so that's
Mm,
where Chef Kimber's expertise comes into play. And so not only are we pulling out the foods that we don't want to eat right now, but it's introducing, like I was saying, the spices and herbs. And so things, cooking with oregano and rosemary and just all of the different things that, traditionally in lots of cultures, foods and dishes are full of spices and herbs and flavors. It's not just salt and sugar. And so our palate, in the United States is very much like how much salt and sugar, is in the meal, makes it tasty. But, we should be cooking with that entire spice rack, because if you look at oregano, it looks like this miracle plant when you look at all the studies and how it's antimicrobial and it does this and then it does that. But then you're like, oh, but lemon balm, oh my God, it does all these amazing things. And so, like, individually, they all look like miracle healing things. But the idea is you're not supposed to just take a pill of cinnamon, right? You're
right.
supposed to cook all of your meals with all of these different spices and herbs. And in that way, get the healing benefit and the diversity that it causes in the microbiome, because the gut microbiome is healthiest when it's diverse with good bacteria. And we define the good bacteria as the bacteria that when we feed it, so when we feed our gut microbiome diverse fibers, the polyphenols, which are the colorful fruits and vegetables, and these spices
Mm,
and herbs, the cinnamons and the oreganos and all those things, then that bacteria makes what are called postbiotics. So there's prebiotics, and then there's the actual probiotic itself, and then there's the postbiotic. And so the postbiotic is what the good bacteria, like, essentially poops out, that is amazing for our health. And we call them short chain fatty acids. There's a million different things, but that's one of the main things that we're always looking at are the short chain fatty acid content. And that showers your body with all sorts of amazing benefit. And that's what defines the good biome. So if you put healthy foods, spices, fibers, and all of these good things into the gut, you're going to get a good, solid, healthy gut lining. So, not leaky gut. And then you're also going to get
right.
a healthy biome, which secretes all these good byproducts. It's going to help with digestion. It's going to help with hormone balancing, and like the whole organism is in balance. When you put processed foods into that system, what you put in is what you get out. And so you are feeding the bacteria that is pro-inflammatory. You're feeding bacteria that is not producing the good beneficial biomes, and some that are frankly dangerous. So they might be hiding out in your gut, like not causing problems, but say you're hospitalized for a reason, and your body is under a lot of stress, you can actually have that bacteria translocate, go right through the gut lining, and cause sepsis right in your blood. And you can be very, very
Mm,
sick. And so we can harbor bad bacteria in the gut. And it's because we're putting emulsifiers from our diet. There's all sorts of additives in our food that aren't on the labels because they are processing ingredients, right? And so we've really done a lot of harm to our food. And the effect is that it's damaging our biome.
so reintroduction or introduction of these healthier foods and a kind of a different approach, like you're
Yeah.
changing a person's mindset about what they eat, like by the end of the second month, is the plan to actually see visible changes in the appearance of the skin and moderation of the acne, elimination of the acne?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely by the second month. So it's, of course, quite variable because some people's acne is, some people like literally get rid of dairy and their acne gets way better. And you're just like, just
Mm,
that one thing. Usually it's a little bit more complicated. And then some people are really complicated, or say they have an autoimmune condition, and every time that flares, their acne flares because of that systemic, that whole body inflammation that's going on. And so some people are way more complicated, but most people, even by the end of the second month, are seeing, dramatic benefit. And it's not just in the skin, right? You're they feel better overall because the hormones are balancing, they're moving their bowels, they feel better energy, right? It's much more consistent. It's not the ups and downs where it's like, you're doing a bunch of caffeine all day long just to keep your energy levels consistent. Your blood sugar is crashing and then it's spiking. And so people feel better in general. But skin can take 3 to 4 weeks, for those deep acne spots to really heal. But the level of that deep, painful inflammation gets better, within weeks of changing your diet.
Okay, so take us into month 3, the optimization phase, and I forget the acronym you
The
used. That
restore.
was the
Yeah.
R?
Yeah.
Yeah, restore. Yeah.
Yep. So into month 3, it's really about trying, teaching how to maintain the benefits. And that's the month where we really focus on fiber and fermented foods because a lot of people in the beginning can't tolerate a lot of fiber. Excuse me. A lot of people in the beginning can't tolerate a lot of fiber because their system is just not um, it's not primed for it. They don't have the bacteria that can break it down. And so we have to introduce that slowly. And so by month 3, we're like, all right, let's really optimize this gut health. We're going to, introduce the fibers, and we teach people how to bring it into the diet in a way that they can tolerate. And how do we eat fermented foods?
Mm.
Also, right, like our culture does not have a lot of fermented foods, and pretty much every other culture does. And so it's
Yeah,
like,
that's so true.
and so Chef Kimber's like, takes the fear away from it, right? It's like these fermented foods aren't intimidated, they're not scary, they're not going to make you sick, and this is how you can bring them into your diet in a way that is delicious, but then also just not intimidating. You can make them at home, you can buy them, but she really helps guide people to the fermented foods in a way that's not intimidating.
Yeah, I feel like I mean,
Mhm.
I don't even know if I eat fermented foods anymore. I mean, for me, I have this weird relationship with fermented foods, as because of the tyramine, and I have this sensitivity to tyramine. But like when I think about when I was a kid, we had like all kinds of eggplant dishes, and I'm Italian, and when you mentioned oregano, I'm like, my God, I probably had no inflammation as a kid. I mean, except for my horrible habit of eating Lay's potato chips, like, they're, yeah, I know, you
Yeah.
know this. But the oregano was in everything. It was in all the sauce. My mother used oregano in shrimp, baked shrimp. She used
Mhm.
oregano on chicken.
Yeah.
And I need to get back to that. Like, I
Yeah.
know my body was like primed for that, like as a child. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've and I've grown distant, but I think about fermented foods, like think about Korean cuisine. Like
Yeah.
they eat so much kimchi.
Hmm.
And like it didn't even occur to me how healthy that could be for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just loaded with, all sorts of beneficial microorganisms. So people pay like, a lot of money for really, really nice, well-studied probiotics, but it's like,
Yeah.
it's like you can also eat it, it's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we have all these beautiful supplements and complicated herbal blends and studies showing that they
Hmm.
do this, but it's like, and that's great for somebody who is like maybe got, more advanced kind of gut distress and symptoms and stuff. But it's like, or, like your grandma probably did, you go in your backyard and you clip some thyme, and then you mash it up and you
Mm,
put it in food. Or, like Indian cultures, they ferment everything, all their
yeah.
grains are fermented. And so, you know, the fermentation process breaks down the foods in a way that makes the foods much more, easy to digest for us. But then you're also getting all of these microorganisms that are beneficial for your gut also. And so there's so many benefits to fermentation that it's just an art that we've lost in our culture. And people are intimidated by it. People think that it might make them sick, or they just
Mm.
don't like the flavor because we're not used to it. But it's all things that can be reintroduced. And I think Chef Kimber does an amazing job making it very accessible to people.
Yeah, well, kombucha is definitely an acquired taste, right?
Yeah.
Some
My
people loathe it and other people like live on it.
Yeah, yeah. My husband thinks it tastes like garbage disposal water, and I could see why he could say that. But and the
He's
idea.
not incorrect, but you have to learn to love garbage disposal
You
water.
do, and once you
Yeah.
get that taste for it and you get away from the sugar, and that's a big thing that
Yeah.
Chef Kimber talks about too, is like at first you really crave these things. And it's not just that you're craving the flavor, but you're craving like your microbiome is craving these foods.
Mm.
And it's telling your brain like, hey, where did the sugar go? Like you need to eat more sugar. And so it's part you, but it's part the microbiome telling you what you want to eat also. And so once you get past that first month, then you go back to something before, like you get go back to that like really sweet coffee drink, and you're like, oh my God, like that is so sweet. You lose the taste for it, and you gain the, you want those spices. You want to taste that oregano and thyme and rosemary. You want to taste all that in your food. And when you get something that's just all salt, you're like, that's just salt.
Yeah.
So your palate really does change, and the first month is definitely the toughest as as you're kind of, you know, as you're detoxing of all that sugar and salt.
Yeah. I meant to ask you earlier, like who is the program really for? And maybe as importantly, who's it not for?
hmm So it's really for people, I mean, of all ages,
Okay.
anybody who really wants to take that deep dive and understand what their skin is trying to tell them. And they're willing to, put the time in. And it's a long course. It is not an overnight fix. It's not just another lotion or potion or like the one magic supplement. This is really healing the body from the inside. And so it takes time and dedication, learning to cook in a different way, being willing to go through your personal products and saying goodbye to like artificial fragrances, and going through your kitchen, and replacing the plastic with the glass. And it does take a level of dedication. And so not everybody is in that place at this moment and can do that. And that's what
Yeah.
medicines are for. Like some people have so much going on, and right now it's like, they're going to go to their dermatologist and they're going to get some medications to control the symptoms so that they're comfortable. And that is totally okay. This is for the people who've done that and are ready to kind of take the next step so they can get off their medicines, or for people who just don't want to do medicines and want to understand what their skin is telling them. So, but as far as like age, gender, it applies to absolutely everybody.
You just mentioned something that I wanted you to go deeper in. You said artificial fragrances.
Yeah.
What? Why that?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that as much, but the elimination phase, it's not just food. Like we spend a lot
Mm,
of time talking about food because it's just so important for your gut and your health in
yeah.
general to be like nourished. But part of the elimination is getting rid of endocrine disrupting chemicals. There is very, very clear science for how endocrine disrupting chemicals in the environment can be a trigger for acne, and also other acne-like things like hidradenitis suppurativa is a condition where you get boils in the armpits and the groin. And we're now having evidence that these chemicals can actually trigger that as well. So it's not just acne, but other inflammatory medical conditions. But these are chemicals in the environment that disrupt our hormones, and some of them, we can kind of process quickly, and other ones stay in our bodies and we pass them on to our children. And they can kind of bioaccumulate in our bodies. And we have evidence that some of these chemicals, we pass them on to our children, and then our children are at a higher risk of developing obesity and insulin resistance and things like that as well. So these chemicals, the main two chemicals that we have very clear evidence for are phthalates and the bisphenols, so like BPA. So
Mm.
that is mostly going to be like the plastics that everybody is talking about. So heating in plastic is probably the worst thing that you can do because we know that
Oh God, people still do that in the microwave. Oh
well, and
no.
yeah, I mean, people don't know, and you can
Yeah.
buy products that are designed to be heated in the microwave. It's like you crack the plastic top and then you steam it
Right.
in there, in the plastic, in your microwave, and just saturate. And so,
Saturate your food with chemicals.
but and then if you think about takeout, like a lot of takeout, you get piping hot food, even soup, right, in a plastic.
Yeah.
And so, and it's accumulation thing over time. And
Yeah.
so plastics in that way. And then we know a lot about like the resin that is on top of receipts. And so whenever you get that receipt and it's that shiny, slippery
Yeah.
layer, that is absorbed right into your body. And we have a lot more information about how that is very actively absorbed through the skin into the body. And then the other one, phthalates, are the reason I brought up artificial fragrances is because phthalates, which are used to make plastic nice and flexy and bendy and not just snap, they're bound to a fragrance because what it does is it helps penetrate your clothing and your skin to make it stick. So when you're walking down the street, with your clothes that you washed with a fragrancy detergent and like it stays smelling like that and everyone down the street can smell you, it's because it's bound to chemicals to make it stick and penetrate. And those chemicals we know disrupt hormones and specifically cause acne. And so fragrance, if you want to smell nice, should really be like an essential oil. And I know a lot of dermatologists hate essential oils, but they might cause a rash, but like if you're allergic to them, but they're otherwise a great source for a scent without worrying about thousands of proprietary chemicals bound to phthalate. So I do think
Right.
it's really important to eliminate those.
So no dryer sheets, everybody. Switch to those wool balls. And if you have a cat, they love to play with those wool balls.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I hear you. Like it's nice to smell flowery and all of those things, but when you get away
Right. Spring
from the
fresh.
smell and then
Yeah.
you smell it again later, it's very overpowering and you're like, oh my gosh. And some people are very, very sensitive and they'll get an instant migraine around fragrances that are
Yeah.
artificial like that. So
I never wear fragrance when I have a migraine, ever.
yeah,
Like
it's really triggering
it's
for a lot of people.
it's nauseating to me. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
really sensitive to smells.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk a little bit about the esthetician. The
Mhm.
esthetician's kind of as close to the patient experience as you are.
Yeah.
Like there are certainly estheticians will be listening to this. How do you see estheticians
Yeah.
playing a role in this inside out approach to the treatment of acne?
Yeah, and I mean, estheticians might be more close than the dermatologist, right? As far as like how much time they're spending with people and having time to discuss things while they're doing treatments and whatnot. So I think the estheticians are a really important tool, not just for the services that they provide, but because they have the time and the connection with people to be able to provide a lot of the education and to really validate when people are like, could it be something that I'm eating? Like could it be related to my constipation or my, menstrual irregularities or this or that? And the esthetician has the opportunity to be like, yes, absolutely. Like, have you tried this? Have you heard of that? And they can really help support people on, on that journey.
Mm. And
Yeah.
what about a skincare routine? Is the skincare routine part of that first phase elimination?
So I don't go too much into skincare in the course just because there's so many people that are really great at talking about kind of the outside work because everyone's skincare routine will look a little bit different. I think in general, most people agree that having gentle, very obviously very gentle skincare because you don't want to disrupt the barrier of the skin, and so you want it to be very gentle. But and then having like a morning antioxidant and an evening tretinoin like a retin-A on board is always kind of like the foundation. But then what it looks like on top of that, whether you're using salicylic acid or mandelic acid or
Mm.
whatever your routine is very personalized. And I think that talking with your dermatologist or your esthetician is a great way to come up with a routine that fits best for your skin. So we don't go into depths. We do talk a little bit about like what a foundation looks like because everyone comes in at a different point. And it's like some people are doing 15-step skincare routines and other people don't even wash their face every day. And so, we kind of give you an idea of washing your face twice a day, gentle cleansers, and these are the main actives you want to have on board. But beyond that, it really is much more personalized. And I think, people like yourself are out there, you know, sharing amazing information about products that are available. So there is absolutely a role for skincare. And I think if I had to pick one thing, like tretinoin is probably like carrying most of the weight. But
Yeah.
but there's absolutely a role for that. It's not always enough for people, especially with the deep painful lesions. The outside stuff just isn't going to be enough.
And let me interject and play my role. If there's anybody listening to this who isn't washing their face every day,
Probably nobody that listens to you. I,
I I need to meet someone who doesn't wash their face every day, but what it's cool.
it's like
I guess I would be.
it and people are desperate. They're trying all sorts of things because they don't have answers, and people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on all sorts of different topicals and products with the hopes that that's going to be the one thing that clears their skin. And it's such a complex system. It's not how it works. Like you might get temporary relief, but it's not really fixing that root cause, which is
Yeah.
like we're saying, it's diet, it's stress, and it's the chemical environment. All of these things come in and mess with your gut, and they mess with your hormones, and ultimately present as acne. And so unless you really start diving into those areas, it's just going to be bouncing around from one product to the next.
Yeah. Look, this is incredible. I'm so excited about what you're doing. Um, it's just super cool, and I've never seen anything like it. And I love that you brought your expertise and you know and then you know found someone who was equally passionate and could bring the food component to it. Um, I am going to drop links to the program into the show notes. Everybody can log on to Shine Skin Academy and find you on TikTok and LinkedIn and Facebook and all of it. And hopefully, if they're struggling with acne, they can enroll in the Clear Skin from Within program and actually finally see results. Because I know people who struggle with acne struggle a lot with you know not seeing results.
Yeah.
And it's super fascinating. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for really being so curious and inquisitive and wanting to delve deeper into it and find solutions for people.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me to help spread the word. I think that, when we all work together, that's how we really move the dial. And so we're definitely looking for people, and, as this course is getting launched and optimized, to join us and help provide the feedback so that we can just make it, as powerful as possible for people.
Great. Again, the links will be in the show notes, folks. Katie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and welcome back to the Skin Karma Pod. I love having you on. You need to be a monthly guest.
That would be fun. We'll get Chef Kimber on too next time.
Oh yes, let's.
Yeah, she's
Let's.
awesome.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, and I'll speak to you soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Carmine.
Ciao. All right. Thank you for listening to the Skin Karma Pod. Find more insights, real talk, and reviews of my favorite skincare products on the Skin Karma blog at skinkarma.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review this episode. It helps me to reach more listeners. Ciao.